Hey y'all, hey, it's Michelle from Brilliant Quest. And today, I don't really have an outline, but I really have been wanting to talk to you guys about this because I study the wealthy, I study money. There's a lot that I study because I'm curious. And I have to do something with it. And I'm sorry, you guys gotta adjust myself here. Yeah, okay, there we go. Sitting on my chair, weird. So anyway, I wanted to talk about a few of the things that I've learned about the wealthy. And I have talked to my friends and family's ears off about this and started to put it into practice. And guess what? This stuff is the truth. Okay, so here are some of the things that I've learned. Well, let me go back to a long time ago. I wanted to learn more about the affluent because my childhood was, I mean, we weren't dirt poor, but my childhood was nowhere near that. And I started to notice when I was afforded opportunities to go and be in certain places, like in high school, I was part of congressional classroom where I was able to spend some time up on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. And we had kids from a lot of different places, but a lot of them came from private schools and the upper echelon. And they moved differently. They attacked issues differently. And it was an eye-opener where I felt like I was kind of behind. I know, that was my personal thing. I was, 15? But I just felt like I was behind. And then seeing how lawmakers worked, it put me on the path to understand that this isn't even about haves and have-nots. This is about total different realities. And I talked about how people can exist at the same time in different realities. And that was one. And so, like I said, it put me on the path to starting to do that. So move up about 10 years. And there was this book, and I want to say, I know it was by Dan Kennedy, and it was a no BS guide to the affluent or something like that. Yeah. I grabbed the book because, I was still in corporate America and I was having to find ways to use what the company already had and find new ways or new ideas to make more money out of it because I was part of the revenue management team at the time. And I started stumbling on magazines like the ROBD report, which was geared toward the wealthy. I started looking at the titans of the industrial age here. I think at the time, History Channel was even coming out with this stuff. It was all simpatico and nice little serendipities that I was falling into. And so I started immersing myself in that. And there were some big takeaways. And the takeaways were the patterns and the symbols and the metaphors. And, those are things, and I've done a video about how to learn, and you can use just those three things: patterns, symbols, metaphors, and you can expand your knowledge base almost instantaneously. But I started noticing that when looking at people who were truly wealthy. So I don't want to make this long. I do a training like this in Brilliant Quest, where if you are a member, you have access to that. And the people that I have done this particular training with are like, this is really something, because I don't necessarily require that you do so much action, but I do require that you understand the rules of engagement. Okay, so that is the first thing. Rules of engagement. The wealthy enter the stage or the playing field quite differently than everyone else. And the biggest thing that the wealthy use differently than others is time. Yes. For the wealthy, time is something they create. It is not something they experience or live. It is not something that is punitively put upon them. So much so that they have a symbol. They have a symbol. Well, actually, they have two. They have two symbols for time. And of course, you probably, if I were to ask you, what's the symbol for time for the wealthy? If you looked at how they market to them and all these things, one stands out greatly, the other one not so much. So the one that stands out is a timepiece, a watch. And they have... It's really something. It's like, what I noticed was, the wealthier you are, the better, or more simplistically, but better, your timepiece is. There are people who have watches that are worth more than mansions. No kidding. And it is because, whether they articulate it that way or not, subconsciously, it is representative of how they approach time. Now, I'll just want to tell you the other one. The other symbol is a tree, trees. And you might say, oh, the tree of knowledge. Yeah. But for them, trees are kind of like a contractual statement with the firmament of this earth, that I plant this tree, and this tree represents the legacy of the seed that I put out that is going to outlive this mortal coil that I am in, this body. And so a lot of times you will see the wealthy, they have trees. Now, picture, if you will, you're in a city. You don't know the different areas of the city, but you get someone to drive you around, right? Yes. So you get someone to drive you around, and they take you and they say, we're going to do a perimeter and then we're going to go in. So they do a perimeter of the city so that you can see the skyline, the buildings and all of that. Then they take you to the industrial area. They take you to the downtown area with the skyscrapers and everything. Once they've done the perimeter and worked themselves in, then they say, I'm going to take you to the different communities. And something starts to open your eyes, because guess what? You learn by looking for patterns, symbols, and metaphors. And patterns are repeatable things. Symbols, you start to see them as encapsulating a whole bunch of knowledge in one image. And then metaphors help you to understand complex or different things with things that are familiar. Okay, back to these trees. One thing that you're going to notice when you are in a wealthy area is the amount of trees. There are going to be oodles and caboodles. That's an old product. Anyway, there are going to be oodles and oodles of trees. There are going to be a lot of boulevards. You know, a boulevard is a street with a dedicated middle part of trees. Why? Well, if you're looking at it biologically, trees keep the air clean. Trees keep the ambient temperature at a livable area. But trees also reinforce the permanence of that place. Think about it. When you go to subdivisions, you can tell how much it's going to cost based on the landscaping. Now, this is not about trees. It's about lawns. But in the older days, centuries ago, land was so precious that every spot of it needed to be useful. And to have a lawn was a denotion that you were wealthy, so wealthy that you could just grow grass on land. But now, the wealthy, guess what they do? They import mature trees. And these trees can cost $10, $20, $50, $100,000. So when they're building, they're putting mature trees that are going to continue to grow. Now, catch this. Yes, trees are also a depositor of wisdom, because if you get all those roots in there, that tree is going to bring all of its knowledge. It's going to create an invisible network to the other trees to make sure that all the trees survive in that area. And it's going to continuously give back to you, outlive you, and remind you. I've heard tales of the wealthy planting a tree for each child that is born. But the trees that they plant must have a lifespan of at least 200 years, because that means that's 10 generations, at least. That tree is going to be connected to that family, building that legacy and putting it out in the earth and the heavens, reaching up. And so we have that for time. So because the wealthy talk in a difference in time, you're going to see that you're working in time and they're creating time. Oh, I want to say one more thing about timepieces. Rolex. Now, when I was getting the Rob Report, this is a thick magazine, they had so many watch adverts in here. I mean, just pages and pages and pages of watches. And that's what kind of like started tipping me off, like, why are there so many watches? But one watch stood out, and that was Rolex. And I noticed that Rolex would always put the number 28 in the day box of the watch face, 28. Now, you might be like, woo, this is woo-woo. But I will tell you that the wealthy understand the ability to use more than what others use. So whereas we're all about science and that kind of stuff, they use things like the heavens and the language of the angels, which is going to be, are you ready for this? Astrology and numerology. Yes, because there are certain synchronicities that happen when you use certain energies. And these energies can be articulated in the energy that comes through a number, the energy that comes through a planetary constellational movement, and they put them together to give themselves the best way forward so that they can make time work for them, create time, know the auspicious times to do things so that they get a little oomph, a little zhuzh on what they're trying to do. And I've heard it said that, there's a guy, Gary, something like that. Anyway, I have heard it said that billionaires use numerology. Millionaires think it's folklore, and the plebeians think it's witchcraft. And I'm going to tell you, it's the truth. I know from the way some of the wealthy people that I've met and interacted with move. So I'm just saying, they do. And they benefit from it. You could call it code. You can call it tweaks or whatever. Oh, that's another thing. So wealthy people are different from us. Wealthy people are different from rich people. Case in point, rich people use time. So when you hear someone saying my 3-year, my 5-year plan, my this or that, they're normally rich. When you hear the wealthy are planning 2, 3, 10 generations out. So again, they think about time different, and they think about the long game. I heard Alex Hormozy. I love that young man. One day I'm gonna meet you, Alex. If you ever watch this, I'm gonna meet you and Layla. Love y'all. But anyway, he talked about something that he learned that stuck with me because it's right in line with what I've been learning about the wealthy, and that is the wealthy know how long really is. I'm gonna say that one again because I kind of stumbled over it. The wealthy know how long is, and what that means is they understand the long game. They understand that it takes this amount of time before you're even going to see the first hatchlings of a response to your efforts, the first hints of feedback. They get this, yeah? Whereas people who are not wealthy do something, and within a relatively short amount of time, they give up because they can't get any feedback. Now, there is this book, and like I said, I'm doing this on top of my head, so I don't have the book ready, but I can tell you it's by Dr. Anders. Oh Lord, I'll put it in the show notes. Okay, Dr. Anders, and it's talking about peak performance. And what he talks about is deliberate practice. And one of the big components of deliberate practice, which he could have just said, this is how the wealthy get wealthy, is that you do deliberate practice to do it right, and consistent without the need for feedback, input, or even immediate results. You do it because it's foundational and you understand that, like, is it Emerson that said this? That said, the days, I'm paraphrasing, the days will never know what a year can bring. And so it all ties together because the wealthy understand just how long is. They are willing to never see it manifested in their lifetime, but know without a shadow of a doubt that it will come to pass because they've set it forth. And then they pass it to the next generation and they play their part and they play their part. Now, here's another something that I learned that will blow your mind because it did mine. Well, maybe not you. Every wealthy person is not necessarily as rich people. I said it. Every wealthy person is not necessarily richer. They can be, but they don't have to be to qualify as wealthy. What do you mean by that, Michelle? Well, I already told you how they look at time and the symbols they use for time, timepieces, watches, and trees. They and how they don't try to say, I'll do something in this time. They understand how long time is. The wealthy are different from the rich because the wealthy have a different priority list. At the top, you already understand it, it's legacy. And then they look at networks, your reputation. They look at who and not how. Now, of course, recently we've started to borrow that, thinking we're doing something, when the wealthy have been doing this forever. I was watching something from Tom Bilyeu's show, Impact Theory, and he was talking to this guy in Japan who's known as the wealth guy. And I listened to him, he sounded great. And then, but I didn't quite catch all of what he was saying about wealth, because guess what? He was on a totally different frequency. It was not the quality of what he was saying or what Tom was saying. He just started to awaken me to think differently. Lo and behold, I see the same Japanese guy on Lewis Howell's show a little time after. And because I had that first touch point with him when he was on Lewis's show, I got it. Lewis asked him, if you lost everything, how would you get your wealth back? Do you know what he said? Of course you probably don't, because I'm telling this story. Michelle, get the point. Okay. Instead of give a plan of action to go and work and earn money, do you know what he said? He said, I would tell my friends. So Lewis asked him again. He's like, okay, let's reframe it. What if you didn't have your friends? He says, but I do. You asked me if I lost everything. He says, I have friends. And he said, my friends would help me. And I burst out laughing because had that been my first touch point with this gentleman, and I forget his name, like I said, this is just me wanting to talk with you guys and share a little bit about the wealthy, just to get you on this new path of understanding. I would have missed it. What he was saying was, he was talking in terms of what is currency, wealth, and riches for the wealthy. The wealthy put the priority of their legacy, of their network, of their reputation. Money is way down, like around 10. And the reason why money is down there is because if they've been doing this wealth thing so long, they've gotten to a flip over point a long time ago where they won't ever be without money. Even if they lost it, like this guy is hypothesizing, they would get it back. You know why? Because when you have a network of wealthy people understand that it's rarefied air that you live in. That it's probably going to take too much to break somebody else in who's just rich and is coming in with a fight and earn and, just disrupting everything. So they would rather help those they know, like, and trust in their tribe who understand the ways of wealth and how to continue to propagate wealth than to be like letting them fall by the wayside. And I see it all the time. So much so that if you think about the history of, I'm in the US, of course you can tell, you can probably tell I'm from the South by this accent, but thinking back about how they started getting the SEC and the rules that they started implementing to help the everyday person who wanted to buy stock. They started imposing different types of levels, like sophisticated investor. If you earn a certain amount, or that you could show that you could have access to a certain amount of money, you could invest in these riskier things. Well, there were people speculating and doing a lot of foolishness, but there were also people who were trying to get rich, weren't even rich, and they were trying to hang with the wealthy. And the wealthy band together. They will go in on something and they will basically make sure it works, because guess what? They understand how long is. They have learned how to buy and create time so they can outlast you. And their hierarchy of priorities is way different than someone who's just rich. And so that's how you can have a wealthy person who is not necessarily having as much money as a rich person, but is who's going to remain wealthy. There's this term, I recently learned it. I'm not going to act like, I've been doing this forever. But there's this term called, and it's an acronym that says HENRY. And it stands for high earner, not rich yet. HENRY, HENRY, high earner, not rich yet. And I'm fascinated with this group because they usually work jobs, or like me, they have online businesses and they usually make at least 6 figures and up, that kind of thing. But they still need to work. They're not quote unquote rich yet. And what I would love, it would totally mess up the acronym. But instead of the R it needs to have a W. So maybe it would be way or something like that. I don't know. But you can get to wealth way faster than you can get to riches. This is my third point, by the way. And I'm going to be, just if you've stuck this long, stick with me, because here's where the real gold is. Okay? Because I've been studying this. Okay? And I've been working this, and it works. It works. It works. All right. So you can get to wealth faster than you can get to riches. The reason why is going back to time. Remember, that's part of their symbols and the patterns and the metaphors. Wealth is a state of being. Riches are an act of doing. There is this famous thing that has happened that we know, we're taught, and if you've never heard it, I'll tell you right now, but it's called be, do, have. And it is the sacred triangle to the meaning of life. And what it means is, the reason why we are called human beings is because we are in the state of being human. That is why being is there. That is why the first, well, at least in the English language, or the American English language that I talk about, is a to be form of the verb to be, meaning it's continually existing. So the first component is you must be. Then once you are, out of your are-ness, out of your beingness, you do. And then as you do, you start to have. All right. So the wealthy have perfected this progression and sequence. They are first wealthy, then they do what the wealthy do so that they can have what the wealthy have. People who are rich and people aspiring to be rich have this sequence: do, have, be. They do the act of earning money so that they can have the trappings of riches and wealth so that they can become wealthy. And it's backwards. If you're doing so that you can have, so that you can be, you are submitting to the whims of time, because you are inherently putting a time component in it when you are in the act of doing, because doing is an action and it takes time. So the shortcut is to be already, then you do out of your being so that you can have, and you shortcut it. That's why being wealthy is faster than being rich. I'll put it a different way. The wealthy, they command and create time. So when they are talking about their endeavors, they are playing a totally different game than we are. And again, there is another book that I want to say. James Carson, he was a priest scholar. And in the late 70s, he wrote this book, Finite and Infinite Games. And I was forced to read it in one of my grad programs, but it just, once I got into it, it was life-changing. And his premise is simple. And he was like, there are two games that we play in life. We play games. One of them is finite. He said the thing about finite games is that it's a zero-sum game. Somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose. But the thing is, you can only play a finite game if everybody agrees to the rules, because of this punitive thing of winning and losing. So finite games involve trophies, accolades, benchmarks to know who's winning and who's losing. They take score, and they usually have a timed effect. Doesn't that sound a lot like the quest for riches? Playing the game to gain the most money? Doesn't it? I think so. But then on the other hand, the infinite game. The infinite game is outside of time. The goal of the infinite game is to keep the game going for as long as possible. One of the biggest examples that he uses is the game of life, to keep you living, and hopefully at a pretty high level, as long as possible. To end that game is to not play the game anymore. And no one has to lose because you're playing an infinite game. That is, again, why I said it made so much sense when this Japanese guy, and I wish I could remember his name, when he was talking to Lewis Howes, and he said, I would just ask my friends. And it was so simple. And he looked at him just dead in the face. I would ask my friends, like, duh, that's stupid. But they played an infinite game to keep it going as long as possible. It's not a dog eat dog. It's not a keeping up with the Joneses. If you see someone who's still doing that and you think they're wealthy, no, they're not. They're rich. And that is fear driving them. And that's another thing about the wealthy. And then I will stop, because I could go on and on and on about this. The wealthy play a game of faith. The rich play a game of fear. So faith drives the wealthy. And I'm not talking about faith necessarily from a religious or spiritual standpoint. I'm talking about it from the mechanics of faith. So faith, now, okay, most people would say, oh, faith, I understand it from a religious standpoint. Faith without works is dead. That is a famous part of the ancient scriptures of the Bible, if you're familiar with that. Faith without works is dead. So if you take the word faith and you replace it with feelings, you will then understand how the wealthy operate. Feelings without works get you nowhere. And that goes back to be. The being is the feeling. You are that you are. I am that I am. The feeling of it. If you don't put the do with it, you will not have it. You will lose it. And so the wealthy don't have this fear of loss, because you're not going to lose yourself if you're not trying to lose yourself. You're not out here on a course to annihilate yourself. You can't do that if you're trying to be rich. You can run yourself on the ground. You can do so many things to your body that takes you out of here because you're trying to stay up and outwork somebody. Yeah. So with the wealthy, they are faith or feeling based. And it's important that you notice this because feelings, imagination brings about stuff. People call it manifestation. And once I started learning, I'm not gonna go off on another tangent, but once I started learning the path of an emotion, it blew my mind. When I started realizing that emotions are not feelings, that feelings are the brain's response to a trigger, which is something in motion. It can be external and internal, that the emotion triggers, or some people say gives birth to the feeling, but it's the feeling that how you articulate and react to it produces the behavior. When I figured that out, oh my gosh, understanding the wealthy became so much different. So much so that they cultivate feeling. They work on how it is to exist and be in a active feeling mode, because whether they articulate it or not, they have this sequence of being, doing, having. They only do out of who they are. So they do not have a fear of not being wealthy. The rich are driven by a fear of poverty. There's another book. I don't know if I'm gonna put all these in here, but this one is by Dale Carnegie, and it is called Outwitting the Devil. And he has this imaginary conversation with the devil. And one of the things the devil tells him is that he gets people based on their fears. And one of the biggest ones is the fear of poverty. And I don't mind, of course, but he really talks a lot about the fear of poverty and how this fear drives people to do things that are not good for them inherently. And of course, because I've been researching what the wealthy do and using that myself and seeing that it works, it stood out. It's like, yes, this is why people either stay impoverished in their bank account, in their relationships, in their emotions, or in their life in general. You know, a lot of people don't understand that poverty is not just about money. It is not just about a mindset. And I'm going to talk about that because there is nothing said about the mind. But anyway, I digress. Focus, Michelle. What I want you to know is that the wealthy, they have a faith foundation. So, put feelings in the place of faith and you'll understand it. Put the be, do, have, you'll understand it. It's just precept upon precept upon precept. Some of them can articulate this to you that they can, because I got this through observing them and studying them. And sometimes they can't, but they inherently do this. Now let's talk about these rich people. And rich people, this is not to bash them or make them feel badly, but rich people have the inherent fear of losing it all, and that's what drives them. And because of that, they get byproducts of greed. They get byproducts of being nasty and shrewd and all the things that rich people get a bad rap on, because people tend to see that behavior by the bad actors who are rich. Now, I'm not saying every rich person is like this. This is the extreme so that you can understand it. But I will say this, that rich people who start to get this enlightenment of what it is to be wealthy become wealthy. When I was first starting out studying what was wealth, someone articulated it. I don't know who it was, but it just took off. They articulated it based on money. And they said, wealthy is counted in the amount of days you can live without having to have money come in. And yeah, now that you understand that the wealthy help each other, yeah, maybe, but that's not all of it. When I started to understand the sequence of you must be wealthy before you can do and have and maintain your wealth, when I understood that they maintain their being in certain feelings, they really work on these types of feelings. Even when the emotions come to try to pull them out of those feelings, they are so good at maintaining, imbuing, growing, strengthening, enhancing these feelings so that they always have complementary behaviors that always keep them perpetually wealthy. That was an aha for me. The rich, bless them. And I hope if you're watching this and you are a Henry or you are considered rich and you want to get to wealth, heed this. Understand that that finite game that you've been playing of accruing and, you know, that gathering spirit where you're gathering the monies, tweak it a little bit. Yeah, tweak it. And now move it to an infinite game. And that infinite game becomes where you imbue the feelings of wealth continuously. You move to a state of being wealthy so that when you do actions, they are different because they're not fueled by fear. So there is not the boogeyman hunting you down, telling you, you gotta have more, you gotta do more, you gotta work more, you gotta, you know, and you're gonna probably 9 times out of 10 still get the accoutrements of wealth in the form of money, but it will be a totally different reality, a totally different experience where it is legacy and you can pass it on. One of the heartbreaking things that I observe with the wealthy is that sometimes the kids, they think in terms of riches instead of wealth, and then they end up losing the wealth of the family. And so let me land this plane because like I said, I could go on and on, but I want you to understand, if you're sitting here and you're like, I by no means could be classified as rich, let alone wealthy, I want to challenge you. And I want you to understand that right now you can become wealthy. Do you know why? I told you at the beginning, wealth creates time. Wealth buys time. Wealth is outside of time. So in an instant, you can be wealthy. You can state it, and then you work on feeling it. And the way you work on feeling it is you work on the stuff that most people have told you, but you like, yeah, that's boring. But here's the boring part about how to become wealthy. In an instant, you make a decision. Decisions are where you decide. Side means to kill. You kill off every other expression of you. Boom, I am wealthy. I am wealthy. I am wealthy. Because wealth does not mean that you got a whole bunch of money in the bank to start with. I will tell you, you end up there sometimes fast and sometimes eventually, but you always end up with a lot of money in the bank when you're wealthy. But you just make the decision. You decide right now, I'm wealthy. The next thing is you're faith-based, not fear-based, meaning that you're feelings-based, meaning that you cultivate the feelings of being wealthy. And like I said, Bob Proctor and Louise Hayes, all these different people that, got a whole bunch of teeth smacking, sucking at what they were saying when they were around, we're now seeing that this is true. And that is gratitude, imagination, and being able to use your visuals and put action to it. So when you wake up in the morning, if you decide to take this challenge and say, from here on, I'm wealthy. When you wake up in the morning, before your feet hit the ground, be grateful for something. And it does not have to be for the amount of money you have. It can just be grateful that you woke up. And the good Baptist preachers in my neck of the woods say, clothed in your right mind. So be thankful for your sanity. Be thankful that your environment is healthy. Because I can tell you right now, during the time of this recording, there are a lot of people who had that one day and then they don't have it the next day. And it's sad. But you can be wealthy. And cultivating those feelings of gratitude, cultivating the feelings of imagination, because imagination is the ingredient that helps you to start doing. And then once you're grateful, you use this imagination, you now, when your feet hit that ground, you behave as a wealthy person. And faith without works is dead. So now you're in the doing phase where, what do wealthy people do? And you might get it wrong at first, but guess what? The more you pursue it, the more the universe will conspire. Shout out to Paulo Coelho from The Alchemist. Once you make that decision, the heavens and the universe will conspire in your favor to make it so. And so you will start to do the things that the wealthy do. Serendipitous things, happy accidents. Anyway, I can't remember his name, the painter. Happy little accidents, serendipity will start to happen where you will be put in the pathway of like-minded, wealthy individuals. And I will also tell you this, your vision, your eye vision will change. You will start to see people differently. You will start to know who's on the frequency of wealth with you. And the funny part about it is they don't always have the outward look or manifestation of wealth yet. But yet and still, a kindred spirit. Because whether they listened to Michelle on Brilliant Quest and understood some of these things about the wealthy or not, they inherently do it. So I want you to be, do, have. I want you to decide today that you're going to be wealthy. And the reason why I told you about the pathway of an emotion to an action is because your emotions will try to snatch you out of being wealthy. That is why you have to fortify your feelings. Because remember, an emotion is the emoting of a movement externally or internally that then triggers a feeling about it. And that feeling is what launches the behavior. If you understand that the wealthy work on that feeling, because that's the being part, the wealthy work on feeling, that means that they're able to combat what happens when a negative emotion would try to take them out of here. And I do want to say a little bit about emotions. Emotions have movement, right? Well, emotions have something about them. By terms, I call it gravitational pull. Emotions can pull you up or pull you down. Yes, agreed? Emotions can pull you up or down. And negative emotions, honey, they might as well be lock and stock with the very gravity that keeps our feet planted on this earth. Because your feelings can want to keep taking you up to higher frequencies so that you live in what is a utopia, a heaven, if you will, where things come easily to you. But those negative emotions, unchecked and without the strength of continuously working on your feelings, your faith, so that when those emotions try you, they will disrupt your feelings, and your feelings, you'll be screaming, hollering, talking about, I can't make it. You will totally forget that the universe abhors a void, which is AKA speak for the universe is abundant. E equals MC squared prove that we are always growing, expanding, getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I want you to know that if you've already made that decision, start working on your feelings. The feelings come after the emotion. The feelings are what lingers, what lasts after the trigger. Someone talks to you crazy, the way you respond, that's the feeling. Someone praises you, the way you respond, that's the feeling. And part of the feeling is inhabited by your ego. So build up what you need. Get your praises and your stuff. Feed your ego daily. Fix your feelings. I already gave you the cheat codes. Start with gratitude, start with imagination, and start with belief and visualizing what your life looks like as a wealthy person. If all you know is to start by saying wealthy people have money, then allow your feelings to direct you to do things that will get you money. And then once you start getting money, allow your being of being wealthy to understand that there's a tip over point where wealthy people have so much money that the money outpaces them. So they don't have to work for it anymore. The money does what it's supposed to. And then make sure that you put yourself in the right priorities. In the training that I have, I list the 10 different levels as I've observed them that wealthy people adhere to. And I've already told you at the top is legacy. Underneath that is going to be networking, their reach, their reputation. At the bottom is money. So I'm going to end it here because like I said, I can go on and on and on. But I really want to thank you so much for spending your time. You didn't have to give it to me, but you did. And I want to be highly useful because I can be helpful or I can be useful, and you see what they pay to help. So I want to be highly useful. So in the comments below, how about you tell me whether or not you took the leap of becoming wealthy now? And give me your feedback, and let me know if there's any other topics that you want me to cover. I'll be happy to consider them. Now, I can't do it all because I don't know it all, but I am just ecstatic at being able to live in such a time as this, to be able to do this with you. So this is Michelle from Brilliant Quest. I will see you later. Bye.